The small town of Black Hollow had always been a quiet, unassuming place. Nestled deep within a dense forest, it was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, and nothing ever happened. The most exciting event in recent memory was the annual Harvest Festival, where the townsfolk would gather to celebrate the end of the growing season with music, food, and dancing. But all of that changed when the solar eclipse came. It was supposed to be a rare and beautiful event, a total solar eclipse that would plunge the town into darkness for a few brief minutes. The townsfolk had been preparing for weeks, setting up viewing stations and making special eclipse glasses. But as the day approached, an uneasy feeling began to settle over Black Hollow. It was as if the very air had grown heavier and the birds had stopped singing. The forest, which had always been a source of comfort and sustenance, now seemed to watch the town with a malevolent gaze. The day of the eclipse dawned clear and bright, but there was an unnatural stillness in the air. The townsfolk gathered in the town square, their excitement tempered by an unspoken dread. As the moon began to pass in front of the sun, the sky darkened and the temperature dropped. The eclipse glasses were passed around, and people looked up at the sky in awe as the sun was slowly consumed by the shadow of the moon. But as the last sliver of sunlight disappeared, something happened that no one could have anticipated. A deep, guttural roar echoed through the forest, shaking the ground and sending a chill down the spines of everyone in the square. The sound was unlike anything any of them had ever heard, a mixture of pain, rage, and hunger that seemed to come from the very depths of the earth. At first, no one moved. They stood frozen in place, their eyes wide with fear. But then, from the edge of the forest, a figure emerged. It was tall and gaunt, with skin as black as the void between the stars. Its eyes glowed with a sickly yellow light, and its long clawed fingers twitched, as if eager to rend flesh from bone. The creature moved with an unnatural grace, its limbs bending in ways that defied human anatomy. It was as if the darkness itself had taken form and was now stalking the town. Panic erupted in the square. People screamed and ran in all directions, their eclipse glasses forgotten. The creature moved swiftly, its claws slicing through the air with deadly precision. It seemed to be everywhere at once, its glowing eyes appearing in the shadows and its guttural roar echoing through the streets. The townsfolk tried to barricade themselves in their homes, but the creature was relentless. It smashed through doors and windows with ease, its claws tearing through wood and metal as if they were paper. By the time the sun reappeared, the town was in ruins. Dozens of people were dead, their bodies torn apart and left in gruesome displays. The survivors huddled together in the town hall, their faces pale and their eyes wide with terror. They had no idea what the creature was or where it had come from, but they knew one thing for certain: it would be back. Over the next few weeks, the town tried to rebuild, but the shadow of the creature loomed over everything they did. The forest, once a source of life, now seemed to be a place of death. The townsfolk avoided it at all costs, and the animals that had once roamed freely were nowhere to be seen. The only sound that could be heard was the occasional rustle of leaves, as if the forest itself was watching and waiting. As the next solar eclipse approached, the town prepared for the worst. They fortified their homes, set up watchtowers, and armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find. But deep down, they knew it wouldn't be enough. The creature was something beyond their understanding, something that could not be killed by mere mortal men. When the day of the eclipse finally arrived, the town was eerily silent. The streets were empty, and the only sound was the distant rustle of leaves in the forest. The townsfolk huddled together in the town hall, their eyes fixed on the sky as the moon began to pass in front of the sun. As the last speck of sunlight disappeared, the creature emerged once more. This time, it was even more terrifying than before. Its skin seemed to shimmer and shift as if it were made of living shadow. Its eyes burned with a malevolent light, and its claws dripped with a black, oily substance that seemed to eat away at whatever it touched. The creature moved through the town like a nightmare, its claws slicing through the air and its guttural roar shaking the very ground. The townsfolk fought back with everything they had, but it was no use. The creature was unstoppable. It tore through their defenses as if they were nothing. its claws rending flesh and bone with ease. The town hall, once a place of safety, became a slaughterhouse. The survivors tried to flee, but the creature was everywhere, its glowing eyes appearing in the shadows and its claws slicing through the air. By the time the sun reappeared, the town was a graveyard. The streets were littered with the bodies of the dead, and the few survivors were left broken and traumatized. The creature was gone, but its presence lingered, a dark shadow that would never leave the town. In the years that followed, Black Hollow became a ghost town. The few survivors who remained lived in constant fear, knowing that the creature would return with the next solar eclipse. They tried to warn others, but no one believed them. To the outside world, Black Hollow was just another small town that had been abandoned and forgotten. But the survivors knew the truth. They knew that the creature was still out there, waiting in the darkness. And they knew that one day it would return.